My all right. Testing. Okay. Let me just turn this up a little bit. I think I was a little low. There we go. New house, new rules, new everything except energy. Still running on old energy. Oh, well, good day. Good Monday to you. Happy noon. Maybe I'll start saying happy noon. That way I don't forget to say, it's say good
Morning,
morning.
afternoon.
Yeah. Well, we're here. We're moving. We're in the middle of a move and a renovation, but nothing will stop us, I think, Lord willing, from having the podcast and being here to talk about what's important and answer questions. Before we begin, let's start with our sponsors. Thank you to our top sponsors. We have a title sponsor now. Arete has joined the team as our title sponsor. Yeah, and we have Fisher Precious Metals as well. Both of these are connections through our board members, but if you know of any other sponsors who are looking for a 501c3 nonprofit to throw their money in at the end of the year to get their tax write-offs, or they want to know more about what we do, feel free to connect them so that they can add us to the list of nonprofits that they feel comfortable and
Donations.
good giving their money to, and knowing that it's going to be put to good use to help advocate for parents' rights to educate their children as they see fit. All right. Well, without further ado, let me find the correct one of these. Yes, that's it.
We still have FPEA that is donating toward our
Yes. Did
lobbying
I?
They were
efforts.
on the screen, but you were just mentioning introducing the new ones.
They were on the
Yes.
screen. Did I not mention
You
them?
didn't say them, but thank you to FPEA for
Absolutely.
continuing to support us
100%
as a top
yes.
sponsor.
I can't see your screen, so I don't know what you're showing the audience.
It's all right. All is well. Thank you for remembering them because I feel like I'm jet lag or brain. Like, I don't know. We have been going 7 a.m. to like 11
midnight,
p.m.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
For the
what
last week.
sleep deprivation does.
I'm
Yes.
definitely there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but we're here. We'll just catch me on those. Feel free if you're in the comments to also catch me on those as well. So
I'm
we'll
going to
move
pull
forward.
this up and watch the comments, just in case.
Oh, that's a good idea. I usually pop them out so you can see them here, but that's fine. We, in the middle of all of this, we also went to Jacksonville. Or I would say we. I went to Jacksonville on Friday of last week. Deep in the
Saturday.
middle of... Was it? No,
Wasn't
it
it
was Friday.
Saturday?
It was Friday.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
Friday.
It was definitely Friday because we had to
Saturday we
move
moved.
everything in by Thursday and for me to be able to do that. So that was a big deal. But we did. I went down there. Lots of new faces. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for putting on that whole thing. From what she was saying, her and her husband poured their own family money into making that go off, and it was not an event where they were making profit on it of any kind. It was basically just a work of the heart to try to bring community back to Jacksonville. So there was a decent number of people that were there, and lots of friendly faces, a lot of wide-eyed parents, like trying to figure out what they're doing while their kids ran around their ankles, or some strollers that were pretty full, and plans that were being made. But it was good to see. I hope that we can help her grow that as she's doing that. I promise to connect her with Kim, who's running TBHC, the Tampa Bay Homeschool Conference out in Tampa, which is coming up July 25th. Is that correct? I'm going to make sure that's the right date.
I think it's the 20th. Just a minute, I'll
I'm
check.
pulling it up too.
20th.
Yeah. Is it the 20th this year?
Mm-hmm.
It is the 20th. In fact, here, I'll put it up on the screen for everyone to see. That one is coming up July 20th. If you haven't registered, what I do know is that her vendor slots are full. So that's really, really cool. Lots of good information to be shared there. And Brenda will be speaking. Yes, you will. And I'll be the MC, oddly enough. If they can't get enough of us
Because you
on
do
the
that so well.
right. We'll see. If you can't tell, my beard is scraggly. It probably has drywall in it, and my hair is a mess. But I promise to get them all cleaned up before the conference.
There's another Jacksonville conference coming up.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Edison. Is it called Edison Kids?
I think. Yeah, the last week of June.
Mm-hmm.
And then this coming weekend we have another one also in Monticello that we're
Yeah.
And get the word out, because a lot of these new parents don't know where to turn, and they can run into some experienced homeschool parents there at those meetings.
Yeah.
And they really need to connect in the community for resources and people to be able to help them get off the ground. But the numbers of homeschoolers are growing. And we need some experienced parents to be available to mentor them and help them, because it benefits us all in the long run when districts are really pleased with the way the homeschool community is functioning and the parents are getting the help and turning in evaluations to the district that look very good. And there's just a lot of, we need to build community, and we need to be willing to volunteer and help these leaders who are like Tiffany, who saw a need, put out her own money, their own money, and put in the work and volunteer to help with the next event that's there, because it's really important. Parents have very few places to turn, and many of the new ones are very confused about what they need to do. And we need to be the educators in that arena.
I'm noticing, especially from that conference, the one in Pensacola had quite a few new parents. The one in Mariana was, I think their whole presentation section was for new families. And a lot of the families that were there, I was thinking like, oh, this is old school stuff. Everybody knows this. But show of hands, who's new to home education, and see. And hands went up. And I was just kind of like, well, okay, we won't be skipping any other material then. But it's dawned on me that, let's say 7 years ago, there were like 77,000 homeschool kids in Florida. And as of the last count, I think last year was 155,000. So we've really kind of boomed and doubled. And there are even more who are going to be added to that number as new kids. These families with like these double wide strollers, right, are coming through looking for their options. So you're just going to see growth. And it's dawned on me that there's a lot of colloquial terms, traditional terms, or ways of talking about things. Even just so far in this conversation, we've used homeschool and home education, and we mix and mingle the terms, and it can be very confusing for new families when they're talking about their rights or their responsibilities. What's on them at the end of the year to do, and things like that. Especially when there are different ways historically to satisfy the requirements, so that you as the parent can direct the education of your child. But new families don't always know those terms or that lingo. So I thought it might be good for us to kind of talk a little bit about that today. Maybe not go super in depth, but give the overview, drop an overview look at it. And then maybe on a later stream, we can come back with some screens and slowly go through what those detailed sections are of, like, okay, you can satisfy attendance this way and that way. I think a lot of parents didn't even understand that Florida is an attendance state and what that means, for them. So would you like to start anywhere in that discourse, Brenda?
Well, sure. We were going to have week the actual statute that was pulled up, but Jason's had to move his whole computer system on Thursday to get hooked up and then was gone on Friday. So we may not have the slide available, but let me just talk you through it. In 1002.01, if you want to write that down, paren 16, there are 6 different ways a parent can meet compulsory attendance in Florida. And as most parents know, compulsory attendance is from age 6 to 16. If your child turns 6 before February 1st of the school year, then that child needs to be in attendance at one of those 6 options. We don't get involved in the public school requirements. We don't get involved with the parochial denominational options, but we do get involved in the private school option, the home education option, and the PEP option, because those are parent-directed education, and each one of them has different requirements for meeting that statutes. So even though those are the list of ways, each one of those refer you to other statutes that will further define that particular option. For example,
you want to give that statute one more time? I'm pulling it up.
Okay,
so that they can
1003.01, paren 16.
I thought you said 1002. Give me a second. One zero zero 3.01. There it is.
Paren 16.
16. There we go. Way down here. There we go. Got it.
So it's up on the screen now where they can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can roll on.
So the Home Education Foundation started off being called that because we were the first school choice program in the state of Florida. I don't want anybody to forget that we had to break a lot of barriers to be able to be the first choice. Even though the private school option was there had been 5 families charged with truancy in 1983 because the courts did not see a parent educating their child at home under the umbrella of a private school. And those were the families that were being prosecuted because the state did not recognize anything except your child goes and sits in a seat at a public or private school. And so breaking the barrier to allow parents to teach their children at home was a big deal. But by God's grace, we were able to accomplish that in 1 year. So then was added to the statute, the home education program. There was always a option for a private tutor, but not defined very well. So really the one that protected parents the most was the home education program because they were duly registered with the superintendent for the purposes of attendance. And each one of those categories, and I'm going to talk about home education, but each one of the categories has specific things that you have to do to meet those requirements. So for home education, attendance is filing a letter of intent to home educate your child, and then completing an evaluation at the end of a year. So your annual evaluation, that composes your attendance for the school year. They don't regulate what you teach, when you teach, how you teach, only that you meet those requirements.
I had a parent in Jacksonville who I was talking to, and she seemed quite overwhelmed. She was going to be spending time with her son. I think he was in a private school, or no, he was in public school, and then I think they had UA, and she was trying to figure out, how to give him the best education. And so when we were going through this, I was like, take a deep breath, because the requirement is that you educate, right? That they are in that program. The
Wait a minute, let me
quality.
correct that. It's
Go ahead.
not that you educate, that you present a educational program to your child. It's like
Right.
Yes.
you
Whether
can
they
take
Yes.
a
retain
horse
it
to
or not.
water.
That's a good correction. So thank you for that. But yeah, as I was speaking to her, I was basically laying out that the attendance in your program is what is required. That they come out with the stars aligning and marking the correct answers on every test and get into every college is not, it's not a requirement of the program. So take a deep breath and go at your pace and be enrolled. And the look on her face changed, and she was like, I had no idea what I was doing or where I needed to be. She says, I was coming here hoping for answers, and she was like, I have more than that now. Thank you. And I was like, well, I hope you're inspired, not just found the answers. And she was like, I totally am now. And I'm like, well, great. And we high fived, and it was fun. But I think a lot of parents they don't know this part. So it's very important to slow down and take that in, what that
Yeah,
means.
and on that same note, when public school is all that you're familiar with and all that you know, um, it can be really easy to assume that you have to make your program for your child look like that. And you have to be
Right.
covering all the subjects every day, and you have to
Yes.
be doing all the same things in the same amount of time, and you have to be schooling from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it can be overwhelming if
Yes.
that's what you're trying to do at home, especially when you're first getting
Right.
started.
To recreate that.
Yeah, so the piece that comes with knowing that that's actually not required, I've seen that piece wash over parents' faces as well, where they're like, "Oh, I don't have to do that."
Hmm.
Um, you can take a deep breath and go at your own pace and figure it out. So
Yeah.
And the
Sorry for
neat
the
part
interruption.
about that, and you brought up Crystal, is a child may be really engaged in some subject. It may be science or it may be history, and they're just really interested. Well,
Oh, I froze. How am I
you
ever?
just keep doing it. It's all day, all week to burn the child's interest out. And so the
Yeah.
thing that is so neat about home education is it doesn't say you have to do 5 subjects. It doesn't say, you have to do them every day or every week. And so it says
Hmm.
contemporaneously with the whatever you're doing, you keep a reading list. And I'm so grateful because um, God really intervened in the development of this statute, especially for UA kids, because it was the Department of Education insisting that we didn't have to have a test score for those kids to be able to continue home education. The standard that was put in there was that a child has to make educational progress commensurate with his or her ability. And the
Hmm.
reason that we got that in there is because the person that was handling the negotiations from the Department of Education used to be a special needs teacher. And so she didn't want special needs kids to have to meet some sort of standard that they couldn't comply with. And so that standard got in there, believe it or not, from the Department of Education. You just never know
Hmm.
where your allies are going to be when you're doing lobbying. But it's been awesome because nobody except a psychologist or maybe a psychiatrist can determine what a student's let's see, commensurate hit what their student's level is. A teacher can't determine that. A parent would probably be the most likely to determine what that child's level is if they're home educated.
Hmm.
But the superintendent can't come back on you and say, well, you didn't meet the child's educational requirements during this year because they should be fourth grade and they should be learning this and they should be learning that. And I mean, that standard is just so freeing to me that
Mm-hmm.
many parents don't realize that if you're going to take the time and the energy and the financial commitment to home educate your child,
Mm-hmm.
parents are going to do the best they know how to do for that child.
Yeah.
And if they don't want their child at home 24/7 and they don't want to spend their time with their child helping them to learn and to grow, they're going to be playing tennis, whatever it is that the parent really likes to do. And those children are going to go elsewhere where somebody else does that education part.
Yeah.
So one of the people who was over choice office, it wasn't a choice office then, it was just the home education program because there weren't all these other choices for parents. It said publicly one time, he said, I don't really worry about, now this was the department spokesperson, I don't really worry about parents teaching their children at home because it's kind of self-regulating. If they don't want them at home, they don't want to educate them, they're going to do something else with them. And it's so
Mm.
true. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
over the years, we have just seen the parents that are not committed soon
Yeah,
find
that's
another
true.
option for those kids, which is fine. That's what they need to do. I've even advised parents put them back in a private school
Yeah.
because parent was burned out. They just didn't think they could do it anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not fair to the child just to keep them home and not do the education and help them grow to be the best version of themselves they can
Right.
be.
Yeah.
But you just follow the child's interest. It may be fifth
Mm-hmm.
grade math and the child is only fourth grade, or it could be they don't get the math concept, so you're doing third grade in what should be the fourth grade. It's okay. Wherever that child is, that's what the parent needs to be focusing on. And I just think that's the beauty of home education. They don't just get moved forward in a classroom, whether they know it or not, and they're not bored in a classroom because you're going to find something to interest that child. But we started off talking about attendance.
Yeah, so I was
We
gonna say
digress.
if you're a veteran homeschooler and you're bored, then the good news for you is you have a homework assignment. So if this bores you because it's familiar, there are, believe it or not, there are people who this is not familiar to. So go to our forum, flhef.org/forum. Go into our forum and post how many years of experience homeschooling you have and that you're willing to be a resource for people. And see if, new parents come in and chime in under that and say, hey, yes, I have a question about this or I have a question about that. We really designed the forum to be a useful place where the community could help each other out. And most of the questions have been about one of the scholarships, and most of the answers have been coming from us. But we really intended for the forum to be a community place where you guys can help each other out. And as I visit the different conferences and conventions, I try to help parents know that these new parents know that that's a resource that's there for them. So if you're a veteran, you're like, man, I really wish we could help you guys out. How can we be of help to you? That's one of the best ways. Get in there and post in there how many years of experience that you have, and see who comes and asks you questions, and see what you
Yeah,
get.
we have a section in our forum. There's a general question and answer section. You could post it there. We also have a new to home education section in our forum. So if you are new and you want to go there and post questions, the veteran parents that are on this can keep an eye on that section of our forum and see if there's any questions that they can answer or that they want to chime in with their experience there. And we also have a section in our forum for resources made by parents. So if you have a really useful spreadsheet or
Yeah,
some sort of tracking system you've created, you
yeah.
can post it there to share with other parents as well.
Yes, I had a parent who was asking about how to keep the portfolio, and so I talked to her about how to use Google Drive, and all kinds of stuff like that can be really, really useful if when helping each other out. If you share your tips and tricks, especially if you're a veteran. So if you're bored, and you're looking for something to do because we're covering stuff, oh, I've heard this a million times, good. Then you have been chosen. You have been chosen to go to the forum and let people know you're a veteran and you know it all from today's stream, so you're here to help. And that would be huge. So, all right,
And
Brenda.
I forgot to look. Do we have a section for UA parents on our
Yes,
forum?
We do.
And that's really an important place for UA parents to post, because that is a hard way to find resources for your child that's UA. And if you can post in Jacksonville, here's some places I found that offer great services,
Huge.
and, whatever you find in every area of the state, that is such a help to those parents, because you've got such a full job just trying to meet the requirements that child has on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
That you don't have a lot of time to research. But I
Mhm.
usually tell people that ask about how can they homeschool a UA student, I say those are the most resourceful parents you will ever meet.
Well, so we actually have two sections of our forum related to that. We have one that's specifically for UA, and it's under the scholarship section, and it's labeled FESUA Q&A. So if you have questions specifically about the scholarship, you can put them there. But we also have a special needs section of the forum, which is for parents who are experienced with being a parent of a special needs child, to share their resources and advice and help to other parents, even if it's not directly related to the UA scholarship. So we have both of those sections in our forum, that if you have questions or if you have advice or resources to share, you can go and post in either of those.
Yes.
I would hope in the future, as parents start posting these and we really get a great collection of them, that we can create I would just say a page, because I'm not familiar with all the right terminology, but like in the Jacksonville area, here's, these resources. In Central Florida, here are these resources. And then parents can add to that as they discover new resources for their children. It would be so helpful to those parents.
Yeah, we can certainly create subgroups of clusters of forum posts and things like that are area
So
specific.
we need a lot of help from our people that are watching this. We can't do it all.
Yeah.
The forum is set where you have to have your posts approved, but you can create posts. You'll just have to wait for me to approve them, but before they go live. But on your end, you just submit it, and then once I click approved, it'll show up in the forum. So please, if you have resources to share or questions, we really want our community to be engaged and interactive there, rather than us being the only ones to post anything. So.
All
right, Brenda. Back to where were we?
Attendance. We were on attendance. Okay. Okay. So parents may choose to put their children in a private school that serves home education parents, homeschooling parents. I want to differentiate between the two, because home education is a program.
Right.
And it has its certain requirements, and then private schools.
And why are you making that distinction? Because like a lot of new parents probably wouldn't understand why you're making that distinction or what you're talking about there.
So
they're probably thinking, why would I enroll in a...
So do you see the okay.
Yes.
So you can see that they're numbered 1 through 6. Private school is one of the options.
Correct.
Okay. It's separate from the home education program option, which I think is number 4.
Yeah, they're labeled A through F. So private school is C and home education is D.
Yes.
Okay. So private schools, and we can call them the familiar term umbrella schools, are still private schools. And there are a lot of requirements that apply to private schools that do not apply to a home education program.
Right.
Most of the requirements are on the school, not on the parent. But
and I think that's... Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's why a lot of parents are unfamiliar with that, because they're insulated from those requirements. So the umbrella schools are like, yeah, we'll take care of everything, and then you can homeschool your kids, which, aside from the verbiage being complicated and colloquial, is correct. But the burden is then on the private school, and those children are actually private school students, not technically legally seen as home education students. That doesn't change the fact that you're at the dinner table teaching your children, or at your desks in your room, or taking them for walks. You're doing function and form the same homeschooling treatment. But then all the requirements are 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 on the school itself. Sorry, keep going.
Okay, so the big difference for parents is because there is an attendance requirement placed on private schools. There are a certain number of hours and a certain number of days that a private school has to be in operation. Therefore, the parent has to submit days and hours to the private school. Most of the time, it's on a monthly basis, and you just have to keep track of the number of hours that you teach your child at home in a private school. And they're held responsible to see that every child is in attendance. There's another statute that applies to private schools. I think it's 1003.23. We didn't pull this one up ahead of time, but it has to do with the reporting requirement for private schools. And it could be 2.1 and not 2.3. I don't remember which of the two it is. But it says that public and private schools have to keep a list of enrollment and attendance, and that those attendance and enrollment documents have to be open for inspection by the superintendent. And many times, private umbrella schools give parents incorrect information in that they say, well, nobody will know who you are if you're enrolled in an umbrella school. For the most part, that's true. But if a superintendent decided that they wanted to inspect the register of enrollment and the attendance of those students in the private school, then the private school is going to have to show it to them. So the superintendent may show up at whoever runs your private school's home, and they are going to be have the authority to look at those records. So keeping the records is very important for the parents' protection in those private schools. Also, the way they submit for Bright Futures, the way they participate in Florida Virtual and extracurricular activities, it's the school's responsibility to do those things on behalf of the student versus the parent submitting those things on behalf of their child. So it's a different way of doing things, and it's all spelled out in statute. If the state wanted to get really, really overly concerned about private schools, and you're in an umbrella school, there's a list of things in section 1002.421 that is required for any private school to be able to participate in the scholarship programs. That lists out basically all of the requirements, state and federal requirements for private schools with a facility. And that's one of the reasons that umbrella schools can't participate in the scholarship programs, is because they don't meet those requirements. like a radon inspection and the health inspection, fire inspections. Your doors have to have certain type of handles on them, so in case of a fire, a student can get out. It's a long, long laundry list.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are running a private school, which umbrella schools are not one of the options in the list of attendance, they fall under private schools. So
Right.
if the state wanted to get really hard on private schools, the people that run the umbrella schools online could base a lot of inspections in their homes that they didn't anticipate. I don't think the state has the personnel to do that. I don't think they're going to do it. They haven't since the home education law passed and gave parents the right to teach their children at home. All those cases were dropped against parents who had their children enrolled in a umbrella school once the home education law passed. So really it served to protect them as well. But I don't think that the state really has any interest in going deeper into oversight of private schools unless they're taking money from the state. And at that point, then they want to protect the health
Right.
and safety of the students that are in those schools that are being funded by state money. So I
In
don't
a
know if that's
future,
helpful.
in a future, maybe far distant future, where public schools are being vacated and left empty, but still meet all the codes, they could perhaps be leased out to some of these. And if they're already meeting code, that might stir things up a bit in how all of this plays out.
Right.
Um, I think there's some very interesting things that are just on the horizon that maybe is, going through the rigmarole of every day home educating our kids. We're not necessarily thinking about the big macro changes that could be happening as we go from 77,000 to 155,000 students in 2 years, and it creates shifts, and those shifts have to kind of move. The information shift is one that we need to answer, but the other one is, that creates problems in some ways and opportunities in others. It's really kind of depends on what end you're on, but it's good to have the information to know this, so that you can plan, or how to steer your family.
Well, I think that's a very interesting point where public schools are being vacated, because it opens up a great opportunity for charter schools. It opens up a great option for micro schools where actually the kids are in
Yeah.
attendance, and maybe even private schools that serve parents, because no, it might work, Jason. The hybrid school.
Hybrids, yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. It really comes down to working out those details. I know that some of the issues with meeting code for all of those were some of the other issues. So if those have already been met, that it might create a opportunity there. Anyway.
Well, this is what we do between sessions.
Yes, it is actually.
We brainstorm.
Yeah. We do have a question that came in, so I don't want to interrupt the stream of what we're talking about, though. So I'll bring it up later, whenever you're ready.
Oh, go ahead. We're interrupted. We can get back to what we were talking about.
This person says, off topic, I know, but a super important point was discussed at the family cafe over the weekend at the Step Up for Students session. That was this weekend? I thought it was next weekend.
I guess
it was this weekend. I missed that then.
The
new CEO.
We need to put it on your calendar for next year.
Yeah. The new CEO and the new CIO were in attendance, as well as many others from Step Up for Students. If a student had PEP in the 2023-2024 year, but is not renewing and instead applied for UA or EO or something else, testing is still required before funding will be released. This is also the information being given out by messenger as well. I think it's going to catch people off guard. Okay, so that's me just reading
the
it.
question. Yes, reading the comment. Yeah.
I will start the answer by at least saying that we were not at the family cafe. So I can't say that this is exactly what was said or not. I can't confirm that. So we'll just operate that this is the information given. This makes sense to me. I've been hearing other reports that they were saying that it wasn't required, that if you had UA, it wasn't required for you to do your testing, submit your end of the year testing for PEP, etc. I will say this, as far as giving you a hard confirmation, I'm still looking into this question with the legal team at Step Up for Students to make sure that the statutes are both being read and communicated out properly through their customer support channels. So if you're interested in hearing the update for this, just follow into our forum. Once we get the information, we'll post it. We'll post it on our Facebook page as well as we'll post it in the forum. So, Brenda, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I would say that if a parent switched over to UA, I can't answer technically because I'm not an attorney. We're not attorneys.
Right.
Whether the PEP parent has to turn in a test score or not, that we're going to have to leave up to the legal beagles. But if you went into a UA program, your child would be registered with the superintendent, and you would have an anniversary date upon which you would need to turn in your annual evaluation for the purposes of home education. How that falls on renewal, I don't think that the requirement in the UA is the same as it is in the PEP, where at the end of the year you have to turn it in because you don't turn in anything to Step Up. You only turn it in to the superintendent where you're registered for attendance. So I don't think UA parents who have switched over from PEP would be required to turn in an evaluation to Step Up just to the superintendent.
So speaking, you're talking about maybe those parents who last year were on PEP as a wait list, and then the wait list opened up and they switched to UA because they were on the wait list.
Mid-year.
Right.
Yeah, but switching, if you completed PEP for this past school year, and then you're switching to UA for this upcoming school year, that's a different situation, and that's what we're still trying to get clarity on because Step Up seems to be telling people two different things. And so we know what the statutes say, but the way that they are interpreting those statutes is what we're trying to figure out and make sure we have clarity on before we make a definitive statement one way or the other.
Remember, we're talking about attendance here. Where was your child enrolled for attendance?
Right.
And a lot of parents whose home education student graduates say, well, why do I have to turn in an annual evaluation? Because that completes your year of attendance as a senior. So you don't have to keep hours and days, but the trade-off is you need to turn in an annual evaluation and maybe your termination letter at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up a good point before the stream because we were kind of discussing this. We know this question's out there. We were kind of discussing this behind the scenes to try to figure out what the answer is. I am still waiting to hear back from the legal team at Step Up for Students to get full clarity on it before we post anything. But you had mentioned that the affidavit the parents signed at the beginning would also be something that would need to be looked at in terms of whether the parents are responsible for satisfying the requirements of the scholarship that they're a part of. I think that 1002.395, the FTC statutes, which FTC PEP falls under.
Which is what is currently pulled up on the screen.
Which is what's on the screen as you're looking. Under the section for parent and student responsibilities for the program participation, which is 7, and then 7B would be if they're not enrolled in a public or private school, so that would be the PEP program. The responsibilities are to apply to the SFO, sign the agreement, and submit a sworn compliance statement. And that, fulfilling the terms of that, will be, if it's lined out in there, and I can't remember because you signed them on ours.
I signed the affidavit, but it doesn't save a copy where I can go back and reference anywhere exactly the wording of what it said. So That's something that we need to check into, is what does that affidavit actually say? What did parents agree to when they signed that in the application process?
Because the scholarship fundings or organizations have been given some latitude in how they write those agreements, and it's not spelled out in statutes. So
Right.
we'd have to go back and look at that.
And then further down into within sign the agreement, that
2D is where
2D
the norm reference
requiring
test.
requiring his or her student to take a nationally normed reference test identified by the Department of Education or statewide assessment under 1008.22 and provide assessment results to the organization before the student's program renewal. So the question, I think, is whether it's only talking about renewal students that have to do that, or if it's all of them. The way that it reads to me is that it's all of them. And that if you're planning on renewing, this needs to be done before you renew. But that, I want to make sure we get the correct information. So if
Right.
you're interested in hearing the answer to that question, I do think it's a good question. I think it's an important
Stay
question.
tuned.
Stay tuned. We will give you an actual answer to that. We just don't have it right now. And as much as I enjoy thinking I have all the answers, I would rather someone else be on the hook for giving the official answer for that. But we'll pass that on to you. So, one of my kids is switching to PEP from PEP to UA. When is the best time to turn the intent to homeschool form? July or August? I mean, that's
Whenever you want your anniversary date to be.
right. It creates an anniversary date, so that's really up to you. That's a great question, Leilani. I love seeing you here in our comments. I love seeing you here. Let's see. I think that's it as far as that question goes and the information. Do you want to pick up where we left off, or did you have
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we've covered kind of the private school option.
Mm-hmm.
And
home
did you
education.
put up that statute that I referenced, 1003.23, I think, or 21?
For the records, yes.
Right. Is that
Yes.
up?
Yes, it was 1003.23, attendance records and reports.
Okay, so if they're looking at that, they're going to see public and private schools listed there.
Yes.
And it's going to say that they're open for inspection by the superintendent. And then at the very last, it says this does not apply to home education program students, or something along that line.
Yes.
Yes.
The reason for that is we wanted to be sure that the state and the superintendent understood they couldn't hold us responsible for days and hours. Okay, so then PEP, we have discussed that most of the first part of the year.
It's been a year-long discussion.
And continue to do so. So you know what the requirements are for that. It's a whole different section of law. Jason just pointed that out with the reference he just made in statute. So you can see there are different statutes that further define each of those options. And then, of course, UA is a home education program, but even in the statutes related to UA, which is 1002.394, those statutes follow the home education law. And when it was set up to do just that. So those parents have the flexibility of 5 different annual evaluations at the end of the year, and they just turn those in for attendance purposes to show that their child has completed a year of attendance through the UA program as a home education student. And then there's this other option that is, I've been trying to get the legislature to further define this option, which is the private tutor program. At the present time, the teacher has to be a certified teacher. She has to have no more than 25 students, I think is the limit on that. but there's not really many other requirements. So there's no facility requirement. Actually, I've been trying to tell them this is the option that you ought to put a micro school under, because you've already got the option in statute. You just need to define what else is required. But if they put it under this and the teacher is certified, then she's going to have a background check, which is one of my big concerns about micro schools in terms of who is involved in the operation of the school. There's no requirement in law that, and there are some already operating in Florida, that they have a background check. You certainly don't want a pedophile running a micro school, which is my big concern. And you don't want them meeting in somebody's home where the neighbors can come over and they aren't background screened. So residents, a residential facility and background screening are two of the key components that Jason and I believe have to be in place if somebody's going to run a micro school. So even with the home education instructional programs, when we were defining those, they were in a non-residential facility. So there are not in somebody's home, and most of them operate out of churches, which most churches require any volunteers in their church to be background screened. So we're trying to cover our bases for the safety of the children. Not that we provide more regulation on some of these options, but we don't want something horrible to happen in one of these schools and shut down the option for parents.
And I think I appreciate your approach, because one of the things that I know that you're conscious of is not adding additional regulation into home education or all of the parent directed options. And when you were working on the definition of the home education instructional programs, you were relying on the regulations placed on the facilities to add that burden, rather than being placed on the programs themselves, which I thought was a brilliant move, and having the programs themselves be required to operate in a non-residential facility. I just thought, like a puzzle fitting together, that was just so wise and brilliant of a way to do it. We're really looking to get that definition brought back up again. So that is another one of the things in the background that we are working on.
And the other concern that we were discussing is that in the eyes of many people, micro schools, hybrids, umbrellas, all fall under homeschoolers. So if something were to happen in one particular type of program, regulations might come down on all homeschooling, all parent-directed options. So that's just another consideration as we're working on these definitions and the requirements for each and all of
that. Let me give a quick update. You had said we might want to do this for UA parents. I had been working for probably 3 or 4 years to try to get the state to do something to allow parents of UA students to get a more accurate matrix of services for their students' needs. And for several of those years, it was just me waving the flag. And now we have different groups that see the problem. Many of them are in a private school, the groups that we're working with. They're not getting the adequate funding for the child in the private school, and they see that they need more money to provide the services that those children need. So now we have joined forces with several other groups, Teach America, the private school organization. I don't know if it's still called the McKay organization, but that represents private schools that serve students with disabilities. Foundation for Florida's Future is on board. We've got several other organizations that now see the need, and we're trying to come up with a way that we can get an evaluation on that child by the standards that they use, but not going through the school district, or at least provide a way of appeal for the parents outside of the school district. So we don't have any of that resolved, but that's another big issue, just like the definitions that we just talked about, that we're trying to come up with resolutions and definitions for, so that we can better help the parents have the options that they need and get the right funding.
That's good. It's very important. I know that I was being on that call. I'm not as experienced in all the lingo. I know that we have new families coming into home education, and we throw all the acronyms around. And then I was sitting on that call with Brenda, and mostly listening because that's all I could do. But acronyms left and right were being thrown, and I just felt like I was in like a firing zone, like ducking and listening carefully for the call outs, and it was interesting. It was very, very interesting. We do have a couple of questions, so we're wrapping up on time. Let me go ahead and hit these questions, Brenda. And I have been trying to find the answer to this one because I can't quite put my magnifying glass on the answer. But Ashley Jacobson says, looking toward the next legislative session, is there a concerted effort to shorten the turnaround time for reimbursements? I currently have several $100s between 4 kids that we need to float until it gets into my account. Shortening this time would be so helpful. And I was trying to find the actual amount of time. I think what they're running into is I think what they're running into are these longer delays in between getting all of the information in, and they'll go back and forth. So from the time that they file it, it ends up being...
You mean from the time they submit the reimbursement?
Yes. From the time they submit the reimbursement, it can be...
I know from watching the
days.
parent groups, what's happening, there's several things happening at once. One is an actual delay in the processing of the reimbursements themselves. So you may submit a reimbursement, it may sit there on submitted for a long time before it ever actually goes into review. And then it may get put on hold. And lately it's been put on hold for, I'm just going to say it for dumb reasons. Like it'll be put on hold for not having information
Look
attached.
at you firing off the language here.
Yes.
We have children
Excuse
listening.
my language, no. It may be put on hold for missing information that is actually there, like missing the date, missing the payment amount, and it's there. The processor was just going too fast and missed it. Other times it is parent error and there really is something missing. So, and then the second part is that there is a delay between when the reimbursement is approved and when the funding actually releases to the parent's account. And that has been lately longer than usual. I don't know what's going on, but there seems to be an even longer than usual delay between approval of the reimbursement and actual money into the parent's account. So there's... there are kind of two parts of why parents are experiencing delays with their reimbursements. And so this question is one that I'm seeing come up a lot in Facebook groups and other things.
And we're empathetic to your concern, but right now, Step Up is not meeting what's already in statute. And there's not much that the state can do because there are only 2 scholarship funding organizations, and Step Up has the majority of all of the scholarships in the state of Florida. And coupled with the new Emma system that they're making everybody switch over to, and the fact that it's the private school EO scholarships became unlimited, so anybody that applies gets one, which added how many scholarships? Do y'all remember what they said? I mean, it was a massive number of scholarships to their already overburdened system.
It was very big. It was the biggest.
And then they're adding 40,000 new scholarships this year to the PEP. So, and during the middle of last year, they added anybody who had applied for a UA and on a waiting list. The legislature approved for them to get a scholarship. So I'm not saying that it's a good situation. I'm just saying that Step Up has had a lot to manage, and they're doing the best they can to get the money to the parent as soon as possible. And even on the front end, from the time the department releases the money to them, and then they have to get the money into the student's account, there's some delays on the front end for them.
Yeah.
So
and we're not trying to make excuses for them. They knew the game when they signed into it and decided to take that on as a burden. That's their job. That's what they're paid to do, and they should be doing it. I do think that in statute somewhere, I believe is it 60 days is the window.
Yes.
Yeah, and the parent handbook for PEP actually says please allow up to 60 days for a reimbursement request to be fully reviewed. So that's not 60 days for money to be in your account. That's 60 days that they have given in the handbook for them just to review the reimbursement.
Right.
So again, I've seen them happen much faster than 60 days.
Yeah.
But
within 7, I've seen some of them really fast.
But right now, I think that they are, I don't know if they're revamping their system or something, but it seems like there's a lag happening again. For a few weeks, they were going really fast.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what's going on in the back end, but in order to answer her question was, is there a plan to try to get something in legislation to keep them accountable for a quicker turnaround time for reimbursements? That was the question.
Yeah. Currently, right now, no, that's not on the plan because they're not meeting the standard that's already there. So it's trying to kind of give them time to figure out the kinks and get what will be their pattern. And if this becomes the pattern, then, certainly something needs to be addressed or done. But they're dealing with pure chaos this year. So I wouldn't wish what they're having to deal with on anybody at all. That's like
they do have a new
mansion.
They are bringing in a new CEO who's coming from Barclay Bank, who's familiar with a lot more of the systems than the former CEO was. Not that he didn't do the best he could, but that just wasn't his expertise. And so hopefully the new person that's coming in will understand the kinks in their new Emma system and how to get the payouts faster. There's hope on the horizon.
Yeah. I have an easy question for you. Jennifer Scott says, is there a matrix published somewhere for the unique ability scale?
Yes. It's on the Department of Education's website.
Okay. I know I saw it during that call.
It's not easy to find, but it is there.
It's not easy to find.
And then I'll ask this next question. Just summarizing the question, she asked if PEP students can do a super senior year. Super senior is where they do, instead of graduating what would have been their senior year, they spread it out into 2 years to give the student more time.
Is that what that means?
That's what that means. So they basically do 2 senior years.
There is no such thing as super senior year, and I'm not sure where that idea originated. I would think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but the PEP students are probably not going to be allowed to do that. They can spend their money after the student completes. So in actuality, you could keep that money and keep your student at home another year, but you're going to mess up bright futures. You're going to mess up a bunch of other things if you keep them in as a super senior year.
Yeah, and the difference, correct me if I'm wrong, but the difference is if you're in home education with the county, they are not tracking grade levels. It's not, you don't have a senior year. You just complete it when you complete your home education program. You inform them that you've completed it. But in PEP, they are assigning you a grade level every year, and they are tracking your grade levels each year. Right. And so that's why you're going to run into, well, you were 12th grade last year.
Yeah. How are you 12th grade this year and asking for PEP funds again?
Yes. My only question on that would be, when you apply each year, you put in the grade level that your student is that year. So I wonder if you could just do 12th grade twice and it would just look to them like you repeated 12th grade, like you held your student back.
I don't think so.
But you probably would run into an issue there. So that is why it is different when you're in home education. They're not tracking grades. So this term super senior year is just a colloquial term that parents use, like we're basically just not graduating them yet. We're doing one more year. But in PEP, because they are tracking grades, that's why it is different.
Yeah, I would imagine that with PEP, and this is an imagination opinion, this isn't a by statute answer, but I would imagine that when your child is finished with 12th grade, they're graduated out of the program, because I don't believe that there's a way to do yet, at least, a way to do year 12 twice, and especially if you're re-enrolling in PEP and trying to get more scholarship funding for that year. That's not a thing.
But you
so
are
far
right. You won't
statute.
get new scholarship money, but you
Right.
will still have access to any remaining funds.
Sure.
So that's what Brenda was saying. There is a way.
can do that.
Our contact with Step Up, because we had some parents that this was their student senior year, the 23-24 year. They had PEP for the first time, but it was also their senior year. There is a way to mark your student in the system as a continuing student that will just have access to remaining funds, but you're not going to continue to get new funds every year.
Correct. Yeah. And the funds stay in that account if until unused for 2 consecutive years. And then once 2 consecutive years of them being unused hits, they roll back into the FTC program. So, all right, I think that's all of the questions I have on here. So, we're gonna get back to remodeling and get
Yes.
renovating. So
We're
that
living in
wall,
absolute chaos right now.
when you walked in here the other day, there was that big white wall. They've already knocked out part of that wall, and he says that he thinks within the same budget, because of the measurements, they might actually be able to knock out that whole wall.
Open up the
and
whole
open it
living
up.
room into one big space.
Oh, that
beam
would be
across.
awesome.
That'd be
That
They
huge.
also smashed out our
Huge.
shower this morning, so there's
So there's
chaos
only one
everywhere
bathroom.
here. Yeah.
But we still have a
I'll come
bathroom.
back when all the dust settles.
Yeah. And I was trying to black out the window behind me because I think this is where my desk needs to go in this room, but I don't know. I may end up moving it.
Yeah, so right now you see boxes in the window just because there was too much light coming in from behind us.
And that's the old banner that I misprinted.
I like the banner in the background.
Oh, man. Well, here we are. We're going to try to get enough done so that we can get to that conference. Where's this one at?
Oh, yes, I pulled up all the information. So if you are in the Jefferson County, Monticello area,
Monticello.
we
That's
are
right.
going to be this weekend at a different event.
Holy moly, your calendar.
Yes, it has it's synced with all the
Wow.
things. We're going to be at the Jefferson County Homeschool Seminar in Monticello this weekend. It runs like 9:30 to sometime in the afternoon. We are not speaking at this event, but we have a table there. So
Yes.
if you're there and you want to come
Yes.
see us,
We'll be speaking to all of you.
we will be doing a short talk speech of some kind of Q&A or something during the lunch hour. But other than that, we will have a table there just for people to come see us and ask questions. We will be there.
Oh, Laura Brown's on. Hi, Laura.
Oh, and Jason met Katie Lane and her family
I did.
this past
Yeah, I'll
weekend
have
at
to
the
post a
Jacksonville
picture.
event. So
Yeah.
thank you, Katie, for sending me the picture of you with him because I wasn't able to make that event, but I enjoyed seeing that
And
picture.
I've been so busy, I just forgot to show you the pictures of.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
she showed
sorry.
me the picture.
That's good. Oh, on other note, so did you see it or was it here yet? Crystal took a picture of me, apparently, without me knowing somehow. And then she put it through an AI filter and generated a Viking picture of
Because
me.
that's his heritage. He came from like Scotland, but before that, like Danish Vikings. Or
So
something.
there's this creepy looking Viking picture that
It's on the mantle. It's him as a Viking.
very
It's awesome.
closely resembles me. And it's the only piece of artwork up in the house right now.
I got to come see that.
Oh, man. Oh, all right. Well, without further ado, we're going to let you guys have your Monday back. We're going to go get busy. We want to say thank you once more to our top sponsors, FPEA and Fisher Precious Metals, and to our title sponsor, Arete Cybersecurity. We really appreciate having you guys with us. And if you guys are listening or sharing our stuff know of having you guys with us. And if you guys, please feel free to spread the word that we are looking for just a couple more, or many more if they can come, but at least a couple of more we would love to bring on board and round out so that we can
even
continue doing this.
$100 a month from those companies that can
Yes.
that have
Yes.
it would be great.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be giant lump sums. So if you're a family and you love seeing what we do, like there are also support tiers that are there for you to show your love and support. And honestly, those are my favorite. I love our top sponsors. I don't want to talk bad about our top sponsors while you have them on
We're
stream.
very grateful for the top sponsors.
But we're very grateful. But we love those $5 and $10 ones that come through because we know those are families. We know that you are there arm in arm with us, standing behind us, putting that on the line as we put ourselves on the line for you in the lobbying that we do and the work that we do. So we appreciate you one way or the other, and we want to let you guys have your Monday back. So here is the end of stream graphic, and we'll see y'all next time.